Okachuku had always been known as the most skilled herbalist in the region. His father had passed down the knowledge of ancient remedies, cures for all manner of ailments that plagued the villages. Okachuku was sought after far and wide, his name spoken with reverence by those who were desperate for healing. The villagers trusted him, not only for his expertise but for the way he seemed to bring relief to even the most incurable diseases. However, as his fame grew, so did his greed. Okachuku had become more concerned with the wealth and admiration he received for his skills than with the actual purpose of his gift. When villagers arrived with sick family members, he would charge exorbitant fees, refusing to help those who could not afford his services. He began to use his knowledge not only to cure but to manipulate, promising healing only in exchange for large sums of money. Over time, his compassion faded, and his heart grew cold, much to the dismay of his once loyal community. One afternoon, as Okachuku was tending to his growing list of patients, a frail woman arrived at his door. She was gaunt and pale, her clothes ragged. She pleaded with him, her voice weak but desperate. "Please, Okachuku," she begged, "my daughter is dying. I have no money, but I know you can help." Okachuku, already weary and annoyed by the constant request for aid, glanced at her and shook his head. "You have nothing to offer me," he said dismissively. "You must leave." The woman's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't protest. Instead, she stood slowly, trembling, before uttering a soft curse under her breath. "May you feel the pain of others, Okachuku, and may your gift be your torment." As the woman left, Okachuku shrugged it off. "Another beggar," he muttered, returning to his work. Little did he know, the curse would soon begin to take hold. That night, as Okachuku lay in bed, he began to feel an unfamiliar sensation, a sharp pain in his chest. It was unlike any illness he had ever encountered, and it left him gasping for breath. At first, he assumed it was fatigue, the result of a long day tending to patients. However, as the pain intensified, he realized something was wrong. The next morning, Okachuku woke up weak, unable to lift his arms. His once sharp mind felt foggy, and his body ached as though he had been struck with a heavy blow. Concerned, he tried to prepare one of his father's ancient remedies, but the ingredients seemed to slip through his fingers. No matter what he tried, nothing seemed to work. Panic set in. The illness was spreading, and he realized the woman's curse had taken root. Okachuku had always believed that he could control his fate. He was the great herbalist, after all, and no sickness had ever stood in his way. But now, as his body withered and his strength faded, he was filled with desperation. He needed answers. He made his way to the shrine of the village elder, an old wise woman who had lived for many years. She had once told him that the spiritual world should never be trifled with, but Okachuku had never taken her word seriously. Now, with his life in danger, he had no choice but to seek her guidance. The elder listened to his tale and nodded gravely. "The woman you turned away was not an ordinary beggar," she said. "She was sent to test you, to teach you the true purpose of your gift. The curse you carry is a consequence of your greed. To heal, you must seek her forgiveness and learn the lesson she has set for you." The elder's words rang in Okachuku's ears as he left the shrine. He had never considered that his greed might have consequences beyond mere wealth. His whole life had been centered around accumulating riches and power, but now he found himself at the mercy of a curse he didn't understand. Determined to make things right, Okachuku set out on a journey to find the sickly woman. He knew it would not be easy. She had not told him where she lived, and he had dismissed her as a beggar. But now, he needed to find her to undo the damage he had caused. With every step he took, the pain in his chest grew stronger, and he realized that time was running out. He had no choice but to face the consequences of his actions. Days turned into weeks as Okachuku traveled through villages, asking anyone who might know the woman he had turned away. His illness grew worse, and with it, his sense of guilt. He remembered the tears in her eyes as she had left his home, and he wondered what kind of person he had become to cause such pain to another. Finally, in a small village on the outskirts of the region, he found her. The woman was sitting by the fire, her daughter beside her. Okachuku approached her cautiously, unsure of how to begin. "Please," he said, his voice breaking. "I was wrong. I turned you away when you needed help, and I have paid the price for my greed. I ask for your forgiveness, and I promise to use my gift for good, not for selfish gain." The woman looked up at him with a calm, steady gaze. "You have come to the right place," she said softly. "But your healing will not come through words alone. You must show humility, not just in asking for forgiveness, but in serving others with your gift." The woman led Okachuku to a nearby hut where she kept her sick daughter. The child was burning with fever, her small body trembling. "I will not cure her with your remedies," the woman said firmly. "You must tend to her with your own hands, without expecting anything in return." Okachuku was stunned. He had always relied on his knowledge of herbs and potions, never considering that healing was more than just applying remedies. But as he watched the woman care for her daughter with such love and devotion, he understood. Healing was not just about fixing bodies, it was about serving others with compassion. For the next several days, Okachuku stayed with the woman and her daughter, learning to care for the sick in ways he had never imagined. He cooked meals, bathed the child, and sat by her side, offering comfort. With each act of service, he felt the curse's grip on him loosen. He began to understand the true purpose of his gift. As the days passed, the child's condition slowly improved, and so did Okachuku. He realized that his illness had been a reflection of his own soul, a soul that had become diseased with selfishness and greed. Through the woman's humility and selflessness, he had learned that his gift was not for personal gain, but to help others. One morning, as he prepared to leave, the woman smiled at him. "You have learned the lesson, Okachuku. You are no longer the man who sought to exploit his gift for wealth. Go now, and share your knowledge with the world, not for profit, but for the greater good." With her blessing, Okachuku returned to his village, a changed man. The curse had been lifted, but the true healing had only just begun. When Okachuku returned to his village, the villagers were shocked to see him. His once proud and arrogant demeanor was replaced with humility, and his body, though still weakened from the illness, was stronger than before. Word of his transformation quickly spread, and many came to hear the story of the curse and the lesson he had learned. Okachuku went to the village square, where he had once made his fortune by selling his remedies. "I have wronged many of you," he began, his voice steady. "But I have learned that my gift is not mine to profit from. From this day forward, I will help all who come to me, regardless of wealth or status. I will use my knowledge to heal, not for selfish gain, but to serve my people." The villagers watched in awe, some skeptical, others moved by his sincerity. But in time, they saw that Okachuku's words were not empty promises. He became a true healer, respected not for his wealth, but for his compassion. As the years went by, Okachuku continued to help the people of his village and the surrounding regions. He never sought riches again, and his fame grew not because of his knowledge, but because of his generosity. People came from far and wide, not just for his remedies, but for his wisdom, his humility, and his willingness to serve. Okachuku had found peace, not in the wealth he had once craved, but in the fulfillment of his true purpose. He had learned that the greatest gift a person could have was the ability to serve others selflessly. And that, he realized, was the truest form of healing. As time passed, Okachuku's newfound humility and commitment to service began to reshape the village. The once skeptical villagers started coming to him in greater numbers. They no longer hesitated to seek his help, knowing that he would not turn them away, regardless of their wealth or status. Okachuku's practice flourished, but this time, His wealth was measured in the respect and gratitude of the people, not the coins in his pouch. One day, a young man approached him, eager to learn the ways of herbalism. Okachuku saw something familiar in his eyes, the same hunger for knowledge and recognition he once had. This young man, however, was different. He was willing to learn the true purpose of healing, not just the craft itself. Okachuku saw an opportunity to pass on what he had learned, to teach someone who would continue the work he had started, but with the right intentions. He accepted the apprentice, vowing to guide him down the path of service. One evening, after a long day of helping villagers, Uche asked, "Master Okachuku, how did you change so much? You were once a man of great wealth and pride." Okachuku paused, his face reflecting the years of wisdom he had gained. "Uche," he began, "I realized that healing isn't about personal gain. It's about giving of oneself, without expecting anything in return. My gifts are not mine to hoard, they belong to everyone who needs them. That's the true meaning of wealth." Uche nodded, understanding that Okachuku's lesson was not just about healing, but about living a life of integrity. Months later, a wealthy merchant came to Okachuku with a request. His daughter was gravely ill, and he was willing to pay any price for her cure. The merchant, known for his greed, insisted that Okachuku use the most expensive remedies, ignoring the herbalist's advice that simple, natural treatments would suffice. Okachuku faced a dilemma. The merchant's money was tempting, and he knew it could greatly improve his life, but he also knew that healing for the sake of money would undo everything he had learned. After a long night of reflection, he made his decision. He treated the merchant's daughter with the simplest remedies, without charging a fortune, knowing that the true purpose of his gift was to serve, not to profit. The merchant was furious at first but saw the results. The girl recovered with little cost and minimal force. He learned a valuable lesson that money could not buy everything, and he thanked Okachuku with sincere gratitude. Okachuku's reputation as a healer remained intact, but now it was built on trust and respect, not the size of his fees. One fateful day, the woman who had cursed Okachuku years ago returned to the village. Her daughter was now healthy and thriving, and she came not to seek help, but to offer her gratitude. She approached Okachuku quietly, her eyes meeting his with a calm intensity. "You have changed," she said. "I see now that the curse I laid upon you was not just a punishment, but a lesson for you, and for all who would learn from your journey." Okachuku bowed his head in respect. "I have learned much, and I am grateful for the lesson you taught me. It was through my suffering that I was able to understand the true value of my gift. I now serve, not for wealth, but for the betterment of others." The woman smiled, a look of peace settling on her face. "You have redeemed yourself, Okachuku. Your healing has now become a blessing to all, not just a cure for the body but a cure for the soul. You are truly a healer now." As Okachuku grew older, he realized that his true legacy would not be the medicines he had created, but the knowledge he had passed on. He took on more apprentices, teaching them not only the art of herbalism but also the art of healing, compassion, humility, and selflessness. His apprentices spread out across the villages, continuing his work in service to others. Uche, his first and most devoted student, took over the practice when Okachuku could no longer tend to the sick. The village honored Okachuku with a great feast, thanking him for his lifetime of service. He had become not just a healer, but a mentor, a teacher, and a symbol of what it meant to live with purpose. And as he looked out over the village, surrounded by those he had helped, Okachuku felt a sense of peace he had never known before. His life had been filled with both mistakes and lessons, but in the end, he had found his true calling. The moral of this story is that gifts and talents should be used to serve others, not for selfish gains. Okachuku's journey shows that true fulfillment comes from using one's abilities to help others and that selfishness and greed only lead to destruction. Through humility and service, one can find redemption and peace.